everyone. Welcome to today's session at NYJavaSIG. Thank you for joining us. We do ask that you please follow us on our social media, on Twitter, at NYJavaSIG, and we of course have a mailing list for those of you who are email friendly. It's NYJavaSIG@groups.io. Please do join us on those channels. We'd first like to start by thanking our sponsors, JetBrains and Agile Learner. Thank you for your support. We will raffle off a JetBrains license as well as an Agile Learner subscription today. Please do be aware of this, and Gene is going to post a link to the form where you can participate in this raffle. So with that, with those many announcements, I'd like to introduce today's topic, JBang, a better Java. And this is being presented by Max Andersen. Max Andersen is a distinguished engineer at Red Hat. He's been working in professional open source for almost 15 years now with very core projects such as Hibernate Tools, WildFly, and Ceylon. Max led the team behind the JBoss tools and Developer Studio for about a decade, and then has been more recently involved in tooling, especially around Eclipse. He recently started focusing on the developer experience for Quarkus around Kubernetes and OpenShift. We are very honored to have him here. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Max. Welcome, Max.
Thank you. Let me share my screen, if that works. There we go. And you just confirm that you can see it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes, so I'm here to talk about JBang or asking if JBang is a better Java with a little j. I'm not saying it's a better than the language, but the command line tool called Java. But I just have to go, by the way, and merge a little change to JBang. It's going to go very live now. There we go. But you'll see in a few seconds why I did that. So anyway, I'm here to talk about JBang, a better Java. And yeah, it's a nice logo. And the best way for me to introduce JBang 2 is not to talk so much, but actually show you how it works. I have here, hopefully, a clean directory, if I could type correctly. You see that nothing in this file, this directory. And I have JBang installed, so I'll do JBang init hello Java. That will create a file, and I can actually run this just directly from the terminal. And hello world, it's the magical thing. And you'll see the code is just Java. And you go like, well, that you can do it with Java 11. You can run this command line. So if I actually do Java hello, that should actually work also too. But the special thing with JBang is we have this. We can do more. We can do dependencies. We can get other dependencies outside just the platform. So here I'm just using JBang init again to use a template. The ST is for template. CLI is a template that comes with JBang. And we just do the same thing. And now we have two files. And I can now go, well, I'll just do JBang hello. I can also just run it, but I'll just do hello CLI. Again, you'll see the results and dependencies and build a jar. And if I now say NYC, it should print something out differently. Remember correctly? Yes. And you'll see that what I actually have here, and you'll see in the beginning when I did the first build or run, it results in dependency. This is info pico CLI. Those who don't know it, it's a little library to make pass command line arguments from in the main method, right? And you'll see in here there are some annotations. These are definitely not plain Java. So if I now go and run this, even though it's a pure main thing, I do hello CLI Java, it will complain about compile errors and that kind of thing, right? And that's the limit of the built-in Java. So with JBang purely, I can just do this, and you'll see it doesn't get any dependencies, and that's all because it's already built, right? If I do edit, oops, daisy, my keyboard is not doing what I want to. So here, JBang actually can work with any IDE, whether it's Eclipse, IntelliJ, NetBeans, that kind of thing. but it also comes bundled with, or not bundled, it will install an editor if you don't have one. In this case, I'm using VS Code, and you'll see here is the code I just added, and I can do, or I should be able to do, command line completion. So for example, what was the thing we had? Command line. For some reason that doesn't work. Maybe my machine is a bit overloaded. There we go. We're just standing still. Let's go new. Anyway, demo goes not with me. The idea is that it does pick up the different, you'll see here, pick CLI. For some reason, content assist doesn't work for me. I don't know why, but it does know about the classes. So it is an IDE set up for the stuff, and normally the content assist does work. And what JBang does behind the scene is just to create a project that any modern IDE can understand, including VS Code or Eclipse, etc. So that means with JBang, I can literally just start with Java, get running and up and go without much effort. Okay, so that's the the basic of JBang. There's more it can do, but that was kind of where we came from. I came from about a year and a half ago when I came out with the first version of JBang, create and run these kind of scripts. So what is JBang? Oh, why JBang, rather? Well, the way I explain JBang is that I want to make Java better. I like Java, I love Java, but I actually stepped away from Java for about 1 or 2 years. I used more Go and Python for a while. And I was like, hey, this is nice. But I came back after actually taking a year break. And I realized, oh man, Java has a lot of things that I want to do, but damn, it's hard to use. Sorry, hard to get back and install. And there's things you just used to do them, like use Maven, POM files, and Gradle, and multi-layer directories, and that kind of thing. And unless you kind of step away, you don't realize how much an overhead that actually is on you, because you've been doing it for n number of years. So the way I see Java is that it's a door. It's kind of closed, but we all know how to open it. There's some stuff in front of it you have to get through, but eventually you will manage to get in there. And in contrast, there are doors that are like open. You can see people you recognize. It's nice and green out there. And the way I see it is that Java is the dark industrial door everyone knows how to get to, and there's plenty of them. But Python, Node.js, Golang, etc., just tend to have a bit more openness and open arms for beginners, at least. And I like that. And I'm not saying Python, Node, and Golang is bad, but I'm saying Java is not as bad as they make us look like. So I want to make Java the bright place. Maybe fix the door, but at least make it something you can get to easier. So yeah, so when you get to Java, there's stuff you want to like learn and how to use it. You want to run applications, you want to build them, and you want to package them. And what I'm going to walk you through today is basically how these 4 elements are done when we add JBang into the mix. And so yeah, so let's get started with learning. This is kind of the minimal hello world that just uses one dependency. And this is all the code you need. And just to understand how JBang works, this is what you get when you do the init. You don't have to have them, but these are the tricks we do to make it. So then this means that JBang is it's not treating things special. All the Java code here is just plain Java code. But we do a little trick in the beginning. We have these 3 slashes, and this is where the JBang name comes from, because normally you have to have a shebang to like a script, the pound and the exclamation mark. So JBang is like a bad French pronunciation of jbang, but we use 3 slashes, And every slash has a meaning. So the first slash is to bash and C shell to say, hey, there's a path here in the first line. You're going to run a command. The second one is, oh, it's still in the root. And the third one is still in the root. But when you take the two first one, it's a Java comment, which means this is valid Java code. Whereas if you use a Java 11 single file script, it will use the JBang, which won't work in an IDE. So JBang works with more IDEs than the plain Java does. And also this works with Java 8. You don't have to use higher versions, but you can. And then finally, the third one is for Windows users, because if they're running git bash or min.w, whatever the different bash simulations are in Windows, they would have, if you have two slashes, they think it's a UNC path. So the three slashes actually has is there to make sure it works on every major operating system. And then the rest is just calling JBang with this command line, so this file as a command, and then it just runs it. And in the code, there are commands. So //steps is a JBang comment. Also, it's a Java comment that JBang understands. And it just says, hey, go get this dependency. And the dependency is just using normal shorthand Maven syntax or Gradle syntax that most people should know. Or at least this is the most complicated thing, is to learn what those dependencies, how you find them. But you don't have to learn there's a POM file or a build Gradle or something else going on. And then there's the rest of the code. And when you run it, you just have to run one command. You don't have to know, you have to compile and build and run, or build, compile, run. And it'll get dependencies for you if needed. And on the second run, it already has dependencies, and then just run it. So this is much closer to Python or Go experience. You don't have to learn these other different steps in between. Yeah, that's the main thing for Java. Another part, and is just this, and this is the thing I hate the most. Sorry, not hate is a strong word. I dislike about the Java ecosystem is we've grown this set of common patterns on everything. So every example you find out there has like these massive complexities and ceremonies you have to do. It really hit home when my son, who was 6 at the time, started to use Minecraft. And I was like, Minecraft is Java, I want to try it out. And I was amazed that the first couple of 6, 7, 8 pages of Minecraft manual was just to how to install Java, how to set it up by the IDE, and all this complexity. And I was like, this can't be true. So what you see on the screen here is a typical Java project. It's using Gradle, it could be Maven, it's the same kind of overhead for you, right? So first of all, we don't need the Gradle stuff. We don't, there's no need for basic stuff here. We don't also, like, why do we have main Java? We do that for big projects, but why do we have that as the first thing? And then at last, what this actually command little CLI example does, it's a kubectl plugin. Kubectl is the thing we use for managing Kubernetes, but what's important here is kubectl is a tool that wants to have a kubectl dash something to be a plugin. Sorry. And this code is trying to do that, but again, lots of complexity. And in Java, we like to have every class as a top-level file, but we don't need that actually. So all the inner classes you have, or private classes, if they're small and tiny, you can just put them inside the file. Again, you don't have to do this for JBang, but once you start using JBang, you kind of like, oh yeah, I don't actually need to have these things outside. Let's just keep it simple. And in the end, you can run this stuff on the left side. But JBang has a feature that beyond just understanding Java, we can also understand that if you have a file that has no prefix, or sorry, suffix, we will actually treat it as a launchable thing, and behind the scenes do all the stuff that need to be done. So you can actually take what I had before, all those files and directories, and boil it down to a README for README text and a kubectl example file, and that's it. This will work, and you will actually be able to run kubectl example pod list, which this code does, and use the API and as is there, right? So literally the thing here on the left is the same as on the right, except that I can explain that one on the right to a newbie much simpler than what's on the left side. I don't know about you, but that's at least my experience. It's harder for me to explain for like a known like a Java guy who's been around for years that the right side is actually simpler because they recognize all the complexity on the left side. But for JBang, you don't have to start you don't have to start with all this ceremony. So yeah, so multiple files is again just I mentioned this here because when I started JBang a year and a half ago, I was focused on just on the single file thing. I actually started JBang because the Quarkus project used Kotlin in some of the build scripts, and I looked at that code. I was like, "This is Java. Why are we using Kotlin for it?" And that's because there was a thing called Kotlin script. I was like, "Well, let me try over Christmas, and I need to refresh my Java skills and do the same thing." So my goal was to make us not having to require Kotlin. Just to do some basic scripting. And yeah, so only focus was on single files, but JavaSIG actually, which is what JBang wraps around, does understand multiple files. So you'll see on this project here, there are a class called myapp that refers to a class called app with a .name. As long as they're in the same package, this will just work. If I import the package and they are relative to the product, to the source file, they will also work. I can include specific files. So here I'm mounting index.html onto a specific location into the jar. And I can also include Java files that might not be located where I expect them to be. So JBang works with multiple files too. So you can go from single files to multiple files or back and forth, whatever you want to. And then the editing thing, and this is again about learning. I showed you that when you could open this up in a normal editor, any IDE, but it will just be a file, so it doesn't understand it. So we have this command called JBang edit that turns this single project file into a project. And if you go JBang edit --open equals Eclipse, it will use Eclipse, or equals IDEA, it will use IDEA. But if you don't put anything, we will try and locate VS Codium, which is Visual Studio without, which is a free Visual Studio. Download and set up for you with all the VS Code, Java, VS Code, debug, etc. you need to do Java development. So that means that JBang becomes like the simplest way to start not just any Java application setup, but as far as I know, any development environment on the planet, whether it's Node or Python or Go. I don't know if you guys try to set those things up. They are actually more complicated than this. So in that way, JBang, at least in my book, gets Java into the realm of much easier to get started with than yeah, be a first choice if this was if I got to say anything. So yeah, so for learning Java, I do believe that we can make that closed door a bit more open, and you can get started quickly. I didn't show this much here, but just as you can get started quickly as a beginner, when I actually built this was again for building scripts in our build setup for Quarkus. But I realized that by having this, I can literally try any new API in seconds, rather than to go. It's faster for me to go and create a single file with a / steps any Maven dependency than, okay, new project, set up a Maven Gradle, whatever, and figure that out. With JBang, there's just I can do that, and even better, I can do it on any machine I have access to. I don't have to set things up first. But we'll get into that a bit later. Okay, so running Java. So in Java, there are different ways you can do things. So you can run a single file if you want to. You also there's a thing called JShell, which is like a REPL for Java. You can also run scripts with that one. If you want to run a jar, you have to use java-jar. If you want to use Maven, it's maybe exec Java or Java run or some other commands you do. So there's a ton of ways of doing that in Java. Again, this is just an example of, well, Java grew over the last 25 years and things kind of diverged in different directions, exploded. JBang just go like, well, let's just unify. So if you JBang a Java file, a JShell, a jar, we will do the right thing for you. And you can pass parameters to these. And you go like, what's that? Why is it so special about that? Well, for example, JShell does not support parameters. It's just not built into that tool. So JBang wraps it and makes it so you can use JShell as an actual scripting tool, not just as a wrapper. Okay. Debugging. I can't show that here, but if you remember, well, I don't know if you know, remember, but you can use your IDE. So in the IDE, when you have it up and running, you can just run the app, but you can also use JBang --debug, and then it will set up all the agent strings and command line stuff that you're normally used to. And then you have a debugger. And I mean, that's it. Like, I don't even, it's so, compare that to a normal Java setup where you have to have like a whole screen long command line to know how to do debug. Here, you just get going. And again, for learning and getting started, I feel that this is a much simpler approach, and it's uniform. So no matter if you start with a Java or you get a jar, that's there. And by the way, the /through JShell is because JavaShell unfortunately cannot be debugged. That's just how the JShell works. There can't be a debugger connected, but for anything else, we can. Okay, so this has just been like small things on wrapping around Java. Let's go a bit, up in the sky. How about just running Maven artifacts? So if you have a Maven artifacts, you can run with JBang. So this is a Quarkus CLI, a main dependency that has a main class. I'm using Quarkus because that's what I work on, but it could be anything that has a main method. And you can run a gist. So if you have a code sample somewhere, just put it up there, and JBang will figure out all the stuff that's in there. It can even be multi-file gists. If you have dependencies, less depths, JBang will do it for you. You don't have to do anything special. If you browse to your GitHub code somewhere, you can just copy what's in the browser bar and run it with JBang, and off you go. And I want to say that JBang will actually warn you if you're running some random stuff from the internet. But you can tell it to, hey, I trust this user or this domain. That's fine. But the general idea is I want to make it so you can run Java code from anywhere on your machine, or in your Docker container for that matter. Carbon now is a little tool to highlight code as used often in Twitter and Facebook and social media. I can run those too. I actually you can run Twitter tweets, but unfortunately, Twitter now removed the ability to get the text of a tweet without having JavaScript, and so I can't do that, but I could in the past. And then you can run in a jar. If you have a URL or local file, you can go get it. So yeah, but the thing is, these can be quite long, so we can also have JBang has an alias mechanism, so you can actually say, hey, I want an alias for this long artifacts, and now I can just run JBang CLI. Okay? And you can do that globally for your machine, or you can have it locally in your project that you have some commands that runs a certain jar that can be done for your local project or local directory if you want to. You also have this thing called catalogs, or alias catalogs, where in this case, the alias CLI is looked up in the Quarkus IO GitHub repository, and there's a special syntax for that. I'll get into that later. But the idea is that anyone can publish any kind of script or app out there without having to, there's no centralized place you have to register these things. You can set it up wherever you want to. Okay, so that was kind of running for Java, and I feel like I'll just drop the mic on this and say that, well, this is better than Java, at least in my book. Okay, building Java. I just want to, Shana, has any questions, or I just continue?
We have 2 questions, but they're nothing
Okay.
that can't wait till the end. So I would say continue, and we'll ask them later.
Okay, I do. Okay, so builds, and by the way, build is one of my Achilles heels because I really don't want to call JBang a build tool, but fundamentally it is. For Java, there are these Maven, Apache Ant, and Gradle that are the big 3. And the view for me is, well, you're not going to need it initially, at least, because JBang is doing enough for 90% of the use cases I can think of when you get started. So JBang, you can run the script directly, but there are also individual commands for JBang build. Some Java will build it. JBang run, XYZ will build it if necessary, but also just run. And I even have, you can do JBang as native, which will use GraalVM behind the scenes, if that's the thing kind of want to do. So JBang can also produce binaries that with GraalVM that you can run directly from your, natively on that whatever OS you're on. And just to give examples, for example, my kid did Minecraft. I wanted to see if I could use JBang in that kind of setup. So for those who don't know, Minecraft has this plugin system. You can see it like a jar and a war in an app server you can add to a directory, and they'll be picked up. So you can't, it doesn't understand the Java file, but I can just go JBang export the Java file, and it will create a jar, which this then will be picked up. And by the way, I also made it so you can run Minecraft with JBang. So again, you don't have to set anything up. This will just work on your machine. And this was just kind of proof of concept that you can, this is just Minecraft because that was what I did with my son at the time. But this could be a Tomcat server or JBoss server or any kind of thing. You can export a jar and off you go. Mindstorms, another thing my kid did. I actually have it here next to me. I bought a Minecraft thing, and these can actually, there's a little Linux box that has a runtime that can run Java. And here, I'm no longer on my machine. So the Minecraft is just running a jar that has dependencies to stuff on my disk. That's fine. But here I'm actually running on something that doesn't have access to my disk. So there is this notion of you can export a portable jar, which is just a jar with all the libs live next to you and all the dependency wired up correctly. So you can run it anywhere where you have a VM. So you can use JBang to do Mindstorms or anything else that is in a remote machine. And again, so I knew at that time that JBang could kind of fit into anywhere in the ecosystem, but I hadn't actually at the time thought about it being more than just for like these small things and gimmicky things, until I realized in the work with Quarkus, we can do a bit more. So for those who don't know Quarkus, it's a framework to build what we call cloud native Java applications. And it's exceptionally good at making, not using as much memory and be very fast to start up, even without using something like native image. And it does that because it puts a lot of stuff from runtime into build time. And I was like, hey, JBang actually could do that because it has a control over the build. So I added an extension system to JBang that is very, very basic, but it will, when you have a dependency on a jar, JBang will check if it actually has a class that has a certain format, and then it will interact with it. So Quarkus has that in it. So neither JBang or Quarkus are dependent on each other, but they kind of, when they come together, magic happens. So you can actually run full-blown Quarkus apps with JBang. You can also run Spring Boot apps or anything else. It's just that with Quarkus, you get not only full access to all the application you could do, which could be microservices, serverless apps, it could be monolith if you want to do it, and have access to all that API, and it's fast, and it does all the build time compilation with JBang here, and there's no setup. for those who use Quarkus, they'll know that there are not that many lines, but there are lines in your POM XML and build Gradle you have to set up. With JBang, there's nothing because they kind of just talk together and align, and off they go. And even crazier, you'll see, so this is just what version of JBang you have to use for it. You can configure the added syntax for JBang. The added syntax in Quarkus. There'll be that JBang can give it that you can put into your config file. So again, just to reduce the requirement to have separate files for things. But you, that's why we want to have. So that's that qconfig you can put into a single file, and off you go. But our JBang native now don't call out to GraalVM, but call through Quarkus. And one of the things Quarkus does is make sure a lot of libraries out there will work for native. Whereas if you just use GraalVM, there's more setup. Quarkus removes all that setup for you. And even more crazy is that all the stuff that Quarkus can do about containers and deployments and services is available to JBang too. So here's just a command. If you have the right code for a Quarkus app, you can build a container for it. You can do that with JBang, just as you can with Maven and Gradle. This stuff is still experimental, but the whole thing is that you can go from early morning, you can be first time trying to use Java to do Hello World. And if you go through the steps, you can actually be deploying full-blown applications at the end of the day with Quarkus, and you still haven't had to learn what a Maven or Gradle build setup is. Okay, so for build, the simple thing is, you're not going to need it, at least eventually. JBang keeps it simple. You don't have to repeat yourself. It's just kind of end-to-end good enough. And again, this is not JBang being special. It's actually Java. There's over the last 25 years, we've built up all these conventions. And if you combine them correctly together, you can remove all the stuff that we used to have to set up. And therefore, again, I think Java, well, not loses, JBang wins in context of Java command line here, because you can do more. Okay, packaging of Java. So when you're a developer and you want to do Java or write an app, the first thing you do is you code something, you commit it, you build it, you publish it somewhere to download, and then you ship it. And then the user has to download Java, install an app, install app, and run it. This has been the way it's been for X number of years. And so let's see how we can do it with JBang. So first of all, how do you get JBang? Well, first of all, we have a website called jbang.dev, and we have a ton, I think like 13 different package managers that JBang is available in on every major operating system. And I'll just say where I know it can run: Linux, Windows, Mac, Raspberry Pis 3 and 4, any Docker container with that has a Java VM available to it. We have Maven and Gradle plugins, and there are GitHub container actions, so you can use them in your action scripts. So anywhere you can get near a Java enabled system, JBang can run. But if you don't want to use the package manager, there is a uniform app setup you can do with curl, and this gives you JBang in your path. And if you're on a Windows machine and you don't have a bash stuff, you can run this in a PowerShell, meaning on any machine you are, as far as I know, on the planet, you can run this thing. Oh, and by the way, two things. I actually got there were some IBM contributors who contributed AIX and SunSpark setup. So I really mean it when I say anything I run Java, JBang should run on too. If you know a system it doesn't run on, open a bug, please, and we'll get that fixed. Okay, well, now you have JBang. So how does a user get Java? And that's the thing. You can install JBang without having Java, but when you run JBang, it will get Java for you. And even further, once you have that set up, you can also ask for a specific version of Java. And I want to highlight here, JBang will default use what's on your system. Whatever you've used, SDKman or RPM or Shoko or whatever setup, it will use that first because it's not trying to take over your JDK setup. But if you don't have it, if you're a new user or just a lazy user as me, you can just go jbang.java 15 or 16 or 13, whatever Java version I want, and it will get it for you. And it will download it from .gem or .jdk, and off you go. And even in, so you can do that command line, but if you have a Java file, you can control that with these // commands. Here it's Java C options and Java options to native preview, because in Java 14, you needed that for records. If you use Java 15 and 16, you don't. But the thing here is you say Java 14 plus means I want 14 or above. So if you have 15 on your system and run this, it will just use that 15. If you had put Java 14 without the plus and you only have Java 15, it will download Java 14 for you. So the idea is to make it as simple as possible to either use what you have or get it for you if you don't. And that means you can explore not just APIs, new APIs out there by using /deps, but you can also use any interesting new thing from any Java version you might not usually have access to, without having to go, okay, where do I download the right version of Java? With JBang, there's just one way, and you get it, and you can experiment and have fun, rather than get annoyed about 27 different instructions on how to get there. Okay, so how do we code and publish with JBang? Well, you create a project, you code away, you commit it, and you run it. That's it. There's nothing to it. Since I can just run, I can have the code locally, I can run it there, but if I just commit it and push it to GitHub, for example, I can now give it to anyone new, and you can just run it for you. No additional setup needed. If I want to be able to have this on my path, I can do, there's a command in JBang called JBang app that can install things. And what that does is it downloads and builds it as you've seen, but now it also sets up in the path. And that means you can run, if you run this JBang install, GitHub Acme, my app source, my app, etc., you can now run my app. And this is like npm install, pip install, go install, but just for Java. Okay, so looking back to Java packaging, these are all the steps you have to do for a developer as a user, but JBang kind of removes all the complexity on the left side. I want to say that, remember, JBang can also just run jars. So if you have existing stuff that does all the steps, that's great. We can run them for you. But if you just use JBang, you don't have to. And then the user just run it, right? He just, here's a one-liner that will run on any, most machines. And you can even tell the user to install it using the install app. And then he just runs, he will just run my app. And there you go, nothing else. So again, for packaging, I believe JBang makes a better Java, Java command line than, well, JBang beats Java in this case too. So catalogs, you've seen a little bit hints of them. This something again that once I started having, I could run all these things. I'm like, oh, these command lines are quite long. I wanted an easier way to do it. And I wanted something that was not requiring like a central repository manager or that kind of thing. We came up with a year, actually Taco, who works on this. And the idea is you just can go JBang, some alias name at some catalog. In this case is run at JRuby. JRuby is a Java implementation of Ruby. If I click on this catalog, you should see here's a file called JBang will look for JBang Catalog if you just say JRuby. And this catalog is just a piece of JSON that says, here's the thing I want to run and some description for it. Right? And there's commands to do this. You don't have to write the JSON, etc. But just to give you, it's a very simple mechanism. There's very little complexity in this. And just to show, let's see if I can find my terminal again. Oops, there we go. So if I do jbang run at JRuby, I think maybe I even have, yeah. So -e print this is Ruby, and as it downloads JRuby, it's quite big, so it might take a little while. And off we go. The slowest hello world, and there we go. Talking to Jog, and I can Jog NYC. Oh, see, that's the same thing. And yeah, the overhead here is that JRuby takes a little bit of a time to set up, but you get the idea. I don't have to install or download JRuby. I just run the CLI from this thing. So here, in this case, I'm not actually using JBang to develop it. I'm just using JBang to run existing code out there. Okay, where is my browser again? Did I lose it? There we go. Voila. Okay, and then the same thing, if you like the CLI for Quarkus, you can download the same way. There's some other commands in that sense. These are just examples. And the good thing is you can do that for anything that you have, and JBang will be able to run it without any setup. So to kind of summarize, JBang makes it easier to get started. You can explore any API. You can just focus on the code, no ceremony, just get started. You can run anything with JBang, any existing Java, any JBang setup, and it will go and get it from different Gist and GitHub and Bitbucket and GitLab. And if someone adds some other thing and they're missing, it could do that too. It's a very simple mechanism around the existing ecosystem to be built up in Java. Builds, just use Java, JBang. You don't have to use all the other stuff. Again, I'm not dissing Maven and Gradle and stuff. It's very relevant to use for bigger projects. But for basic stuff and even complex stuff, JBang's approach actually is more than enough, especially in these days of microservices, where you just run a little Java app, a little jar that does a very specific thing. Why do we have to have all that extra complexity? And yeah, and even some people actually mix it up, so you can actually still use JBang and Maven together, or JBang and Gradle. They're not getting in each other's way, so to say. And the packaging is just, you code commit run. There's not all that other stuff you have to do to get going. So yeah, I'm actually at version 0.70. And we've been releasing once every week at some point. It's been a month now. We've done a release, but we're trying to get to the 1.0. And what I normally do at these talks is I said, like, I want to, just like I can run things, I want to be able to create projects as easily as I can run them. So we have this idea of templates. So you saw that before. I could use jbang init-t CLI. I want to be able to do the same thing with the catalog. So any project on GitHub, GitLab, whatever, can create a catalog, and we can create templates for them. So see it as Maven archetypes, but without all the Maven stuff, right? Very basic, very simple, great for learning, great for small frameworks that are very coherent, or very consistent, compact, which Quarkus is one of them. So if you actually run this command, you will get a GitHub bot on your disk with a few files, and off you go. Explain to how you get started. I do want to get the second one that we have a bit faster, but it's already good enough for most cases, so maybe I don't have to. We wanted to support BOM-POMs is what they call, or platforms as they call it in Gradle. Because once you start doing bigger things, it becomes hard to import every dependency. So we want to have that support in JBang. And then I also want to be able to publish. And it turns out that we now have templates. We have the POM support, and the publishing, turns out I don't have to do. I think actually you had Andres Almarai here a month or two ago, talk about JReleaser, was it there? I don't know. No, he was talking about the other JModels thing, but he actually took some of the ideas I did in JBang on how I publish all these different Java apps to different package managers. He's now made a tool called JReleaser that actually can be used to release JBang apps, which is awesome. So we are getting there, very close to 1.0, and yeah. So for me, the Java ecosystem have already very qualified, awesome tools that's grown over the last 25 years, have a lot of ceremony around them, and with JBang, I feel it gets better. So for me, JBang is a better Java with a small little j, and I'm very curious of what you think of it too. So yeah, but there is actually one more thing. But before I go there, maybe Dani, do you want to have those 2 questions?
Well, now there's more than 2. We have lots of questions.
Yeah, well, let's take some of them before I go on to the next one.
The first one is, what are your impressions on a high level comparing Bean Shell, J Shell, Groovy, and JBang? Okay, so
Bean Shell is fully interpreted, and it's its own little mini language, and it's using the spec. I forgot the number now. There's a spec in Java on how to run like scripting language in the VM. So they are another class. It's if you want to use Bean, you can use Bean Shell for scripting, but you can also use Bean Shell like in your Java app. JBang is not that kind of thing. JBang is a wrapper around the existing tools to run fully compiled traditional Java. Groovy's is very similar. And by the way, Groovy has this annotation syntax for adding dependencies. JBang supports that too. I just never demo it because it's much more verbose than what we have. And Groovy Shell gets close to what JBang does, but again, Groovy, I need to have Groovy, and which I wanted something where I could just be plain JBang, sorry, plain Java. And the other thing, JShell is a specific tool that can run Java applications, and JBang is empowering JShell in that sense. And there's also another thing is called the kscript thing. Kscript is the Kotlin script is much closer to what JBang does, but JBang has gone further than what kscript can do. There's actually one thing that is not going to be in the 1.0, but it could be a 2.0 thing, is the concept, the way JBang works, you can apply to any JVM language. So actually, Justin Lee, who also works in Quarkus and is a part of the SIG here, has been exploring, hey, how about we add Kotlin support to JBang or Scala or Groovy? You could do the same thing. But that doesn't do that right now, but it's one of those 2.0 ideas to do so. So there is overlap, but they're kind of in their own little corner. Next one, Dean.
That was a great answer. Thank you. The next question is a 2-part question. The actual question, Gunnar wants to know whether JBang supports app CDS. And the second question is, for me, what is CDS?
So I forgot the acronym now, but this is class descriptor.
Class data sharing.
Yes, class data sharing. So this means you can run JBang. JBang. You can run Java first, and on the first run, it will see which classes it loads. Then the second, it will store like a little cache file, and then the second run, it will pick that up, and then it will boot faster. And the answer is yes. Okay. So there is actually a flag. You can go JBang --CDS, and it will do that thing for you. Other things I have done, which I normally don't include in this because it gets just too much, but it also supports JFR. So Java Flight Recorder you can enable, and instead of you remembering all the flags for JFR, you just go JFR, and it has a default setup that just kind of works, and off you go. Agents, you can write Java agents in JBang. So imagine a single file little tool you want to do and introspect some classes, you go like, how do I run that with JBang? Well, you can go jbang -agent and your source file, and then your app, and that works. So again, same with JBang JBoss, just simplified. I've done the same thing for JFR, CDS, agents, and a few other things, but I forget them right now. But yeah.
Okay. Justin says hi in the chat. I think you said his name and summoned him. Our next question is, for native builds, do we need to download GraalVM before, or is it all handled by JBang?
Currently, you have to download it, but there's nothing preventing us from adding the thing. That's just, yeah. If someone wants to contribute, that'd be awesome. But right now, you have to download it. But we should add automatic download for it.
Okay. Our next question, somebody asked if JBang was built using JSR 223 scripting for the Java platform, and Andre said no, it started with 3.30 launched from Java source code, but quickly moved out so it could run with Java 8. Is there anything you could share about that process or decision?
Yeah, so basically, people, when I present it, it's the same question. They think it's about the scripting. It's not at all. Scripting is a very different thing. And JSR 3, the one you just mentioned, I forgot what one, we're running Java. It's in Java 11. They made it so you can run single file. And again, when I first saw it, I was like, awesome, this is great. But then, oh man, I have to I can't use dependencies unless I download them manually, but I also add this shebang in top, which most IDEs doesn't work with. So it's like on a half kind of leg implementation of what JBang does. So when I realized that, and I just made JBang actually compile a jar file in the background, and then I go like, wait, I don't have to use Java 11. This could just be Java 2 if I wanted to. But I stopped with Java 8 because I want to have the JBang itself. I can at least use Java 8 features in. But technically, the principle JBang works with would work with any version of Java since Java 2, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
When you're using JBang and it automatically downloads the dependencies, do you have any ability to control where they come from? A lot of us work for financial institutions, some of which are antsy downloading things from the internet without a proxy, and some of which are antsy about not using an in-house binary repository.
Yes. So JBang, until very recently, used JCenter just because Kscript did it. Then JCenter decided not to exist anymore. So now it uses Maven by default. But if you go in and add a / repo, my secret location equals a URL, it will use that and nothing else. Okay. And then if you want Maven Central, you add it again, / repos equals Maven. And again, just like before, I try to make stuff not to repeat yourself. So I think there's like 5 or 6. We have the Google, Red Hats, Springs, a few others. I forgot Maven Central and JCenter is there as shorthand, so you don't have to remember what URL they have. But the short answer is yes, you can control where things come from.
That's great. That's really useful. We have a handful more questions. Before I get to those, I would like to announce the winners of our raffle. The winner of the IntelliJ license is Kevin Dorff. Congratulations, Kevin. And the winner of the Agile Learner subscription is Charlie Herman. Congratulations, Charlie. Our next question is, what do you think of the Active-J framework?
The what, sorry?
Active-J. It's not about JBang, just someone wanted to get your opinion on it.
I know the name. I don't have I don't have an answer.
That's fair. The next question is back to JBang. Do you consider it a scripting tool, or make it easy to run Java applications tool, or both?
Both. It started as purely I wanted to do scripting, but then I realized, wait, I can do way more with this.
Awesome. Checking on last questions. Okay, we have one thing which is sort of a question and sort of a running joke. There was an active exchange in the chat about teasing one of our visitors about Maven install versus Maven verify versus Maven deploy. But the actual question there is, when using JBang, is there a common command line that you recommend people typically use?
There's a common command line. I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, you just
when you showed JBang, there were some commands you used in addition to just JBang file name. Are there any that are more common than others?
No, so the two you will use is JBang and then what you want to run, and JBang edit, the thing you want to edit. Okay. Those are the two commands. The rest is, fluff. You can
got it. So just JBang and JBang edit are the most common two.
Yes.
Okay, that completes our questions. It appears that you have one more thing you'd like to say, so I'll turn the floor back over to you.
I do. So if you now, this is going to be fun because this is a live thing. Just as in the beginning, I merged a pull request to our website, and that one more thing is an app store for JBang. And this is actually another running joke. There was a Twitter discussion some months back, well, literally on the eve of 1st of April, I think, where Gosling and Brunnerboard were discussing something about what if Sun had built an app store back in the early days? They would have made millions. And I said, well, JBang will come in an app store. And that was like a April Fool's site that I had on this page for until an hour ago. So if I go there now, you'll see it works. If it doesn't, then this is going to be, hey, it does. Awesome. So now if you go to JBang, there's a little link called App Store here. And it actually has indexed remember all this JBang catalog I could look up in the GitHub, etc. So I know what to look for. And I can see all these things. So for example, you talk about Maven. If I search for Maven, you'll see there's actually a little catalog here called JBang Catalog. It has 49 stars. And there's a command with some markdown documentation about how to use this to search maven.org. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to find my terminal again. And you'll see JBang search. So if I search for JRuby, because I think that might be a fun thing. Did I type it correctly? So what it's doing now is just, go get that alias, add that repository, and there's a JRuby thing. And I want that one. And I now can copy JBang to the clipboard. Or Maven, let's do Maven. Oh, Gradle, that's more fun. There we go. And now on my clipboard, I have that thing. So again, the key part here is I looked up in this app store these different tools. Others have, there's one here about how to maintain Maven tool chains. And I think even we have some Quarkus. Anyway, the idea was that since JBang has this notion of catalogs, we can look up and index them, and that's the thing we announced today, the App Store. I have another thing that is in progress, but if you do templates, oh, that's not template. I'm gonna. Did I not change that? Maybe not. Let me just see. Doesn't work. Anyway, there's the App Store, and later on we'll have the templates where you can do all these init things. So if you are, find this interesting, publish your script as a JBang catalog. They'll show up on this page. This index is updated every 24 hours. I might add, make it more often now that it's live. But the cool thing is that you can add your own. Where's my? There we go. My browser. You can add, there we go. You can add anything to it. So besides run the applications, you can also make these templates. So for example, we have the Hibernate team is using or about to publish a list of templates to create like these what's called to report issues. They tell people to go run JBang init this command, and this is for Hibernate Reactive, so they set up the project for you and just change it. So JBang, there's no setup, there's no extra additional thing. It's super compact compared to anything else. And that all stuff will be on that App Store, which is an April Fool's, but now it's a real one. So no longer April Fool's, I guess. So yeah, anyway, my conclusion is, well, my start was, is JBang a better Java? ? I hope I've answered it, and I love to hear what you guys think about it. And if you have anything, the best thing I can do, I want to ask for is tell people about this, because the biggest thing that I have to fight the last year too is not writing the code. It's fairly simple. It's actually to get people that's been using Java for 10, 15 years. They go like, why should I give up Maven and Gradle? Maven and Gradle? You don't have to. It's just with JBang, you don't need to use Maven and Gradle as the first thing before you get started. So yeah, that's, here are the different commands you can install with, and a lot of contributors, which I'm grateful for, because otherwise it wouldn't have been this awesome. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's more questions, but that's the end of my talk.
Well, if there are no more questions, Max, first, thank you so much. This was an amazing session, learned a lot. I'm sure the rest of the audience has been keeping up and providing all that awesome feedback. They love it. Thank you all for attending today's session. Please do visit us and follow us on Twitter. And we've also shared our email address. With that, we conclude today's New York JavaSig. Just a quick few announcements. Our next session, we will have a JavaSig How, or a hands-on workshop. And this is going to be conducted by Andres. And this will be on May 26th. It's from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., which is quite late for him, but he was kind enough to offer that, so thank you. We will also have our next scheduled presentation on June 9th, which will be filled with lightning talks. And we'll also have Bruno Souza talk about careers in the Java ecosystem. If anyone is interested in talking at these lightning talks, please do reach out to us. You have different ways of connecting with us. Please do reach out. With that, thank you all.